As most of you are here, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. How many people understand what Bitcoin is? Okay. Nice thing is it exists in a technical world, and we deal in a lot of technical geek speak with it, and that has actually been one of its downfalls, one of the reasons it's not getting accepted. Very quickly, I am with Nimbus. What are we? In relation to Bitcoin, we are a Bitcoin processor. That means we allow merchants to be able to accept Bitcoin and people to pay them in Bitcoin. We do lots of other fun stuff with it in the meantime. However, let's start with what everybody knows Bitcoin as. Money. Bitcoin is money. What is it? Where is its value? Does anybody know? Does anybody have a dollar bill on them? $1. Pull it out. Most people don't realize this. If I threw $1 at you, would you know what it was before it hit you? Probably. You'd know its value before it hit you. Quick question for you. When you hold that dollar bill up, where is the value in that piece of paper?
Backed by the U.S. government.
All right, you mentioned it's backed by the U.S. government. That has nothing to do with value. Where is the value?
That people will accept it and give me goods in exchange for it.
Okay. The actual value, the U.S. government has come out and said it's worth this much. And in exchange, you can now start to barter goods for that value, okay, by owning that. The real value is actually held in a trust, and it's assigned via a serial number that every one of these have on it. Did y'all know Bitcoin operates the exact same way? Has a serial number. The value is held in a trust. Interesting place its trust is held in, though. In a decentralized network. Nobody has control over it. So you might go, where does it get its value from? It gets its value from users around the world. We're going to take me and you, for instance. I'm going to come to you and say, Bitcoin is trading at $250 for one Bitcoin. I want to buy one from you for $245. You're going to come to me and say, nah, $249. We're going to agree on $248. When that transaction goes into the system, it's then going to say, hey, people are paying $248. And when a consensus occurs across the entire Bitcoin network, the value is adjusted accordingly, up or down. Now, I've simplified a big complex system in that aspect, and that's Bitcoin mining. Has anybody heard about that? They like that idea? What it is that's that decentralized network, how it works, and we'll try to simplify it for everybody. But we get a block. A block is a series of transactions that are all calculated on a hash. All these millions of computers around the world are constantly trying to figure out what that hash is. And there's a difficulty setting set up that in the beginning they said that it should take 10 minutes to process a block. For a computer to figure out the hash on that, it should take it 10 minutes. And the difficulty is adjusted every time a block is solved so that it keeps it very close to 10 minutes. In other words, if computers solve it too fast, they increase the difficulty. If they're solving it too slow, they lessen the difficulty. So that approximately every 10 minutes, every single transaction that has occurred in that block is now, oh wow, lost my train of thought. It is now verified and it is added to the blockchain. Now, when all these millions of computers are out there mining and they're processing these blocks, all trying to figure it out, when one of them figures it out, it goes, got it. All the other computers on the network then stop their processing and come back and verify it. And it's a lot easier to go in reverse than it is to figure it out the first time. Okay? This is where you get confirmations from. This is also where you may have heard delays in Bitcoin of it takes 20, 30 minutes or an hour for a transaction to go through. Our software does some neat little things where we can actually tell in under a second whether it's going to go through. But that is in essence how mining is working. Now, every time that computer that solved the equation, once everybody on the network goes, yep, good job, you did it, he is awarded 25 Bitcoins. That means 3,600 Bitcoins a day approximately are awarded and come into the system. Does anybody realize that there's going to be a limited amount of Bitcoins? 21 million to be exact. The year 2140 is when the last Bitcoin is going to be mined. Every 4 years, however many Bitcoins is being done, they cut it in half. So in the beginning, every time you mined a block and won, you were awarded 50 Bitcoins. After 4 years, it was cut in half. In 2 more years, it'll be cut in half again. And it'll continue that way until 2140 when the last Bitcoin is mined. What's going to happen at that time? Not quite sure. However, the technology behind this, it's distributed computing technology. Is everybody familiar with that? This is kind of the amazing technology in that distributed network that gives the blockchain and gives that decentralized network such power. Governments hate Bitcoin mainly because they can't stop it. Even if they were to take out an entire continent like Asia, the Bitcoin network would still stay online. It would still process. Everybody that was still online would still be able to mine, and all the transactions would go through. As soon as Asia came back online, they would immediately catch up to wherever the network was at that point in time. So, lots of powerful things going on. Bitcoin as a money. People ask me all the time, do I believe that it's going to be here in 20 years? And I look at them and I go, I don't know. Personally, I don't care. The technology behind it in this distributed computing scenario is amazing. When you start looking at those distributed computers and that decentralized network, and what about if we throw artificial intelligence in it? What about if we throw different systems at it? What if we're able to use Bitcoin not to just track money and value, but to track titles, deeds, voting, corporate entities? The network that has been created by Bitcoin is a lot bigger. Most people only understand Bitcoin to a small finite point, which is money. There's a lot of people that's all they care about is money. There is a lot bigger system out there. So we're going to be getting into a little bit different things, and I am going to open it up because this is such a broad spectrum. But I brought a video today. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and it's put together by an organization called Bitcoin Properly. And they are the absolute best ones that have described what is possible. And then we'll go into a little bit of some of the stuff that I'm working on outside of Nimbus involving the Bitcoin network. Quick question on the monetary side. Do we have any quick questions that somebody might want to ask and bring up while we're talking about the money? All right.
Well, who accepts Bitcoin in the Charlotte area?
Currently, there's about 10 businesses. And Nimbus's whole idea and the reason we brought Bitcoin on was to allow businesses to begin accepting it. And we funnel them through our credit card and merchant services side and allow them to do that. And we actually are gaining more and more. We're also going to be rolling out a Bitcoin ATM in several different locations here in Charlotte. And that'll all be part of our network. Once again, the reason Charlotte has such a low amount of businesses that are accepting it is, where are you going to get Bitcoin right now? There's nowhere in Charlotte to actually just go get it. You've either got to get it from a user or you've got to go online and hope that turns out well for you. Before we get the video, how many times has Bitcoin been hacked? Let's talk a little bit about security. It's never been hacked. A lot of people have issues with Bitcoin because of security. Well, last time a bank was robbed, was that the dollar's fault? No. Didn't actually affect the dollar at all. I am going to trip and it's going to hurt. You know, the same thing. The Bitcoin has never been hacked. And that's interesting to think about, considering everything about Bitcoin is open source. You can log on right now and go out and find the actual core that drives Bitcoin and look through all the code on how it works and what it's doing, and it has never been hacked. What can be hacked, and this is one of the things we got to keep in, is the supporting companies. Mt. Gox was a supporting company. Coinbase, BitPay, Nimbus, we're all supporting companies. And it's our systems that can get hacked, not Bitcoin itself. It is actually relatively secure. Now, I've been involved in a lot of discussions, I'll get to you in one second, with gentlemen that go, no, it can really be hacked. If we really want to get into the theory and the philosophical side and get down to it, yes, it can. But is it ever going to be worth that level of hack? Is it ever going to go that far? For us as average users, no. What's your question?
I heard there was a fundamental flaw in that if somebody took over 51% of mining capacity, they could start introducing double spending transactions in the system and stuff.
All right, so he's asking about a fundamental flaw, and it's the 51% problem that occurs in Bitcoin. This says that if any one group or organization controls 51% of the mining computing power, that they would be able to directly influence value. They would directly be able to say whether a transaction can be double spent, which is what the whole mining process is supposed to prevent, so that you can't take that one Bitcoin and pay him and then come pay me, and you're using the same currency. And how much control they would have over it. The reality that we get down into when we start looking at what it would take to get to 51%. There are 8 supercomputers in the world. And when I say supercomputers, these have more processing power than anything else. One of them's in Palo Alto. Okay? All 8 of these computers would only equal 27% of the Bitcoin processing power. So for a group or organization to do that, one, they would have to have access to some major computing power. Or two, they would have to take over entire continents, at which point in time it becomes very, very visible. And other protocols would then come into play. So, hypothetically, is that 51% a problem? Could be. Same way as Bitcoin getting hacked. Is it a problem that we will probably see in our, I'm going to use the word generation, and that's not counting generation of like a human lifespan, but in the electronics and computing world, in the small finite generations, are we going to see that in the next several? Probably not. And we've seen it just with the value drop. We had a flutter in the network, and the reason why is all these cloud miners reached in, flipped the switch, and turned off their mining capabilities. So what did that do to the network? On our side, we didn't expect this, and it caused our network to drop offline at Nimbus. And the reason why is because I told you that we're able to verify a transaction in under a second. What we're actually doing is we're listening to the chatter on the network. And we've got algorithms that listen to this chatter. And we know that a transaction is going to be confirmed before it ever is. And it's all based off that chatter. Well, that chatter has to have a 90% before we go ahead and confirm that transaction before it's officially been confirmed. All of a sudden, when they flipped all those switches, we didn't have our network set up to refresh and look at all the extra nodes out there. What happened was when a transaction come through, it took a snapshot of the nodes, listened to that traffic. But if they fell off in the meantime, we would never get our confirmations above, I don't think I saw over 40% over 3 hours, which in the financial industry, 3 hours is forever and a day. So that caused a major flaw. We now have it so that every cycle it's re-looking at the network, and it no longer can do that, even if there's massive amounts, the nodes go down. So keep it in line on that. Any other questions right quick? All right. Video Bitcoin properly. I really loved what they did. I really support what they're doing. They're really trying to get around a lot of the stigma that's come with Bitcoin. So we will play this and go into it a little more.
What if there's a technological advancement so powerful that it transforms the very basic pillars of our society? A technology which fundamentally influences the way that our economy, governance systems, and businesses function, and could change our conceptual understanding of trade, ownership, and trust. This technology already exists, and it's called cryptocurrency. People often think of Bitcoin as only virtual money or a transaction system. But if you look closer, you'll see that the monetary aspect is just the tip of the iceberg. That's because Bitcoin is a groundbreaking internet technology for which money is merely one of the possible applications. Money exists to facilitate trade. Through the centuries, trade has become incredibly complex. Everyone trades with everyone worldwide. Trade is recorded in bookkeeping, and this information is often isolated and closed to the public. For this reason, we use third parties and middlemen we trust to facilitate and approve our transactions. Think of governments, banks, accountants, notaries, and the paper money in your wallet. We call these trusted third parties. This brings us to the essence of Bitcoin. Bitcoin software enables a network of computers to maintain a collective bookkeeping via the internet. This bookkeeping is neither closed nor in control of one party. Rather, it is public and available in one digital ledger, which is fully distributed across the network. We call this the blockchain. In the blockchain, all transactions are logged, including information on the time, date, participants, and amount of every single transaction. Each node in the network owns a full copy of the blockchain. On the basis of complicated, state-of-the-art mathematical principles, the transactions are verified by the so-called Bitcoin miners, who maintain the ledger. The mathematical principles also ensure that these nodes automatically and continuously agree about the current state of the ledger and every transaction in it. If anyone attempts to corrupt a transaction, the nodes will not arrive at a consensus, and hence will refuse to incorporate the transaction in the blockchain. So every transaction is public, and thousands of nodes unanimously agree that a transaction has occurred on date X at time Y. It's almost like there's a notary present at every transaction. This way, everyone has access to a shared single source of truth. This is why we can always trust the blockchain. The ledger doesn't care whether a Bitcoin represents a certain amount of euros or dollars, or anything else of value, or property for that matter. Users can decide for themselves what a unit of Bitcoin represents. A Bitcoin is divisible in 100 million units, and each unit is both individually identifiable and programmable. This means that users can assign properties to each unit. Users can program a unit to represent a eurocent, or a share in a company, a kilowatt hour of energy, or a digital certificate of ownership. Because of this, Bitcoin is much more than simply money and payments. A Bitcoin can represent many kinds of property, 1,000 barrels of oil, award credits, or a vote during elections, for example. Moreover, Bitcoin allows us to make our currency smarter and to automize our cash and money flows. Imagine a healthcare allowance in dollars or euros that can only be used to pay for healthcare at certified parties. In this case, whether someone actually follows the rules is no longer verified in the bureaucratic process afterwards. You simply program these rules into the money. Ergo, compliancy up front, The unit can even be programmed in such a way that it will automatically return to the provider if the receiver doesn't use it after a certain amount of time. This way, the provider can ensure that allowances are not hoarded. A company can control its spending in the same way, by programming budgets for salaries, machinery, materials, and maintenance so that the respective money is specified and cannot be spent on other things. Automizing such matters leads to a considerable decrease in bureaucracy, which saves accountants, controllers, and the organization in general an incredible amount of time. The programmable open character of Bitcoin allows us to completely rebuild and innovate our financial sector and our administrative processes, make them more efficient and transparent, and significantly decrease bureaucracy. But there's more. In an Internet of Things, our economy will be dealing with machines that actively participate in the economic traffic. In fact, they're already here. Think of a vending machine, or drones delivering packages. These machines are unfamiliar with the concept of trust, but Bitcoin is not. Because of Bitcoin, the drone can be 100% certain that it will deliver the package to the right recipient and know for sure that it's been paid for. And we can program the vending machine in such a way that it will automatically keep track of its supplies, order new supplies from the supplier, and pay for them automatically. Of course, you'll understand that this is only the beginning. Internet technology is disruptive and breaks the status quo. It opens markets and breaks the positions of middlemen all the time. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have caused a paradigm shift. It's time to explore this new technology constructively and critically, and openly discuss potential applications.
I mean, they have done a wonderful job of describing not just what Bitcoin is, but what it's capable of, which is so much beyond what everybody hears in the news, what everybody thinks of Bitcoin right now. As a company that we deal with it on the financial side. However, we have a huge part of our company that we're constantly trying to do, reach out to the communities and reach out. We're actually working on a voting system. We've identified a need. While we can immediately look into our system that we use here in the US, and yeah, we've had recounts. We know Florida, can't count. We know we've had the issues there. We don't have the problems that other countries do. Think about it. When they hold an election in Iraq, somebody's going to die. Somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's son, somebody's daughter. Why not utilize technology that's readily available even in those countries? And if you ever want to look into something called the outer net. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but is it a very, very low frequency satellite-based communications and network that is already online that can be built off of little bitty direct TV type satellites in just a few hours and a few dollars in change with electronics that are already available. Imagine now being able to take devices like that and put them in a voting scenario for villagers, while two neighbors may be fine living next to each other. When it comes to political views, they're trying to kill each other. This is some of the technology that we are utilizing and we're using Bitcoin to do that you're not hearing about in the news. So, overall, Bitcoin is an amazing, amazing process. The technology that exists behind it is going to be here for years and years and years. We're using it in some very cool ways, just internally through our different apps as a payment system, as a system to move digital information around. We utilize it. We are doing some really cool and interesting things with the Apple Watch, with iOS and Android, going all the way through with our company. Biggest thing I want you to take away from this, though, is what can be done with Bitcoin that's not monetarily? Where can this help out our society in general? The whole thing with the How many of you have the FSA accounts? You know, have you ever had it locked out on you? You know, why? Because you didn't submit a proper receipt. You know, amazing thing with the Bitcoin technology, that could have all been done. That compliancy up front. Think about how this could make our government more efficient. A lot of people would be out of jobs then. Of course, most of those people, they don't need those jobs anyway. You know, this is all technology that I believe in fully. Does that necessarily have anything to do with the monetary value of Bitcoin? No. So, open up for just a few questions. I don't want to keep too much of y'all's time because I know you need to go. But does anybody have anything they want to ask?
So I've heard about the blockchain, and there was a big expose on it recently. I remember hearing like the distinction between cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and blockchain and all that. But I never heard the idea that you could program a bit of Bitcoin. How would that work? Does this get like locked in? Like if you're saying that this can only be used for this type of transaction, when it gets sold to someone else, does it like reset?
Let's look at what a Bitcoin is. I know she said it's 100 million different bits that all can be interchanged and programmed. How many of you have an email address? All right. So, matter of fact, most of us in the room probably have a lot of email addresses. Ultimately, an email address consists of two components. The public side, which y'all are happy to give to me, right? And then the password. I cannot send an email without that password, correct? I can receive them all day long, cannot send them. Bitcoin exists the exact same way. You have a public hash identifiable number. And if you've never seen one, I'll be more than happy to show you one. It's a long hashed out number that's difficult. There's been some companies that have come out with vanity ones, you know, so that they're a little easier to memorize and whatnot. No different than vanity phone numbers. However, there is also a passphrase, which is the actual hash of the public and a hash of your password for it combined. And all of that becomes the passphrase to access the actual Bitcoin. So you're not actually programming the Bitcoin itself. You're stating this number, the serial number on that dollar bill, is worth a vote, $20 in an FSA, you know, of something. So now, when it moves on the blockchain and gets recorded on the blockchain, it went from this hash to this hash.
Okay.
And it cannot be double spent, you know, or double used, and you know where it went.
But then it's like reset, and then if it, like, because isn't it an economy? Like they're constantly being reused now. Like
No.
it gives me,
No, matter of fact, in our system, every time the merchant generates a QR code, it's using a new Bitcoin address. A new one. They're never recycled, really. Could you recycle it? Yes. Is that a bad idea? Yes. If you start getting into cryptocurrency and the idea of cryptography and everything, that every time you use the same address, it gets easier and easier to, one, find out who's behind it, two, actually hack it. And so we've now got what are referred to as HD wallets, or highly deterministic wallets, and that every time you do anything with it, it all changes. So it's always new. Remember, we've got 100 million bits per Bitcoin, and we're talking about 21 million Bitcoins. I don't know if there's any math geniuses in here, but that number's big. So, you had a question? Oh. Anybody else?
I'm curious how this like motivation for how you got involved in Bitcoin. Was it because of the currency aspect or all the other ideas behind it?
How I got involved in Bitcoin, it really comes down to, do we have small business owners in here? Anybody? Well, in the small business world, we have a problem. We don't have the buying power to get out from under 3% credit card fees. Small business just can't do it. Walmart can, Starbucks can, all these other people, they can, but a small business can't. So credit cards, everybody knows you have to have it, but what about our alternative currencies? What about our alternatives for them to get our processing fees and our costs down? You know, everybody knows check. How much does it cost that merchant to write a check, you know, to accept a check? Little to nothing, okay? It's just very highly risky. Well, through ACH, we're able to take some of that risk out through guarantees and whatnot. So we wanted to provide merchants with the ability to accept ACH processing. So right on their phone, they can accept a check from you and never actually have to take it back. Well, Bitcoin is a natural progression in that line. They moved $8 million across the blockchain. You know how much it cost to move $8 million? Approximately 80 cents. That's what got me involved in Bitcoin. And if you ever want to see the blockchain kind of in action, go to a website called BitListen. I think it's a .org, but if you just Google BitListen, they actually put each transaction in a bubble. And the bigger the bubble, the bigger the transaction. And it's actually kind of neat to watch. So, lots of real fun stuff. Did that answer your question? Anybody else have anything?
So the blockchain was foisted upon the world by one developer a few years ago. Nobody knows who he is. Is it perfect? Or like other software, is it capable of being improved upon as well? And if so, are people trying to do that?
Okay, so the hypothetical developer that brought this out, Satoshi Nakamoto, Newsweek claims that they found him in California. He is whether Satoshi Nakamoto actually exists, nobody knows. Personally, I don't care. That answers the identifiable. The blockchain, there is what's called the Bitcoin core. And this is what I told you can find, it's out there. There are active developers working on it daily to improve it, to make it better. Is it an infallible item? No. I mean, it's software. You know, Windows is infallible, right? You know, is it infallible? No, it's not. Can it be improved? Most definitely. Has it reached its apex of what it's going to be? No, not by a long shot. They very well may come back in and make it easier. One of our issues in the voting system is now we're required to have a centralized place for you to register so that we can assign you a Bitcoin to use in the voting process. So where's the compromise capability in that centralized system? So have people come out with websites that run off the blockchain? Yes, they have. There's even an entire Kickstarter, it's called Lighthouse, that runs completely off the blockchain. And you get to it in various different ways. You can Google all these. It's actually really neat technologies out there. Any other questions?
Where are you planning on putting Bitcoin ATMs, and how many are you initially going to get?
We're trying to bring 5 into Charlotte. We're looking at South Park Mall. We're looking at 7th Street Market. We may put one in Packard Place. That's, you know, these are ideas that we've got to put them. We're 45 to 60 days out on having them available. And what we're trying to do is the easiest points in the city to bring the populace to get them to the quickest. I actually have a want, and through Nimbus, what we're trying to do is we want to make Charlotte the Bitcoin city. We want to have it easiest, all the merchants, everything. And I'm actually really wanting to bring and turn Charlotte into the whole Silicon Valley of the East Coast. And that's what my ambitions are moving forward with the companies and the technology that we're rolling out.
If I want to buy a Bitcoin this afternoon, what would you recommend?
Ooh.
Wait 60 days for your first ATM.
If you wanted to buy a Bitcoin this afternoon, Coinbase is one of the most trustworthy places to go. It's don't get me wrong, they've got their problems. And you know, you're going to give up a lot of that anonymity of going through them because they're going to want to verify who you are. They have extensive AML KYC programs in place. But you know that if you send $200 to them in the next couple of days, you're going to get $200 worth of Bitcoin. So they're one company. There are a couple here in the U.S. that are actually worth dealing with.
Local Bitcoins has 2 reputable merchants right in Uptown too, so they'll immediately come to wherever you are and just give you Bitcoins for
Cash.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Local Bitcoins, it's a website that puts you, so let's say I was registered on there, there's a seller of Bitcoin, it puts me and you in communication. It's a Craigslist for Bitcoin. All right. No other questions?